Have you looked at all 5,000 of these? And are you saying that all those differences that do change the meaning, that do change the theology, that do in some cases change the practice, that these are all in the one that's in heaven? Can you see what we're this is the line that we know that, listen, this doesn't make sense to us listening. And you might say, well, that's because we're ignorant. Okay, call us ignorant, call us idiots, like you love to do. You're going to call me an idiot for even asking this question. But see, we have to ask this question because we do live in the West, and because this is causing so much damage to your religion, and it's causing so much damage to your murtads, that you got so upset with them for even asking the question. And you're saying, do not disagree with us. Well, that's the red line. You're saying, do not go beyond this red line. You're saying to all these other murtads, God bless them for asking the question, because they need to know. Or let me ask you this right now. Do you still believe that not one word or one letter has been changed?
As for the Christian missionaries who are out to convert to the Ummah, good luck with that. You've seen in the last, if you haven't learned anything, learn at least that missionary work has never been successful, and alhamdulillah, it never will be successful. I'm not trying to come off as dismissive, but they are not real academics. The reason why I don't listen to them is because they have nothing to offer of my benefit. Now, I want to be clear here. I do listen to many non-Muslim academics. I am very engaged in academia. I listen to and I read books written by Quran scholars that are not Muslims. They're in the academy. Recently I purchased a super expensive book by Brill. You have to do that. And I engage with actual academics. I want to be very clear here. But these missionaries in particular, they have nothing to do with the world of academia. They are untrained, unqualified, ignorant, arrogant individuals who spout ridiculous claims that don't have a shred of credibility amongst actual academics. They don't even read Arabic, and they are literally like blind mice grabbing at whatever they can, trying to concoct a completely bizarre narrative and then preaching some garbled rubbish to their choir, who obviously have no clue, as to right and wrong about the religion of Islam. And because they have repetitively done this, I will have to break my rule and just for once give these idiots the smackdown that they deserve, to show them, because they have no integrity, to show them that they are utter fools who should not and cannot speak about the religion of Islam, because they are a disgrace to the field of academia. They are untrained, ignorant people who don't have a clue about what it really is that they're talking about. Yesterday, for the first time in my life, I swear by the Creator who created me, wallahi wa billahi wa tallahi, I looked at the series of topics and I chose one at random, completely. As Allah is my witness, I swear by the one who created me, this is the first link that I clicked on, and within 5 minutes of just scrolling through, because I'm not going to listen to cover to, I don't have time to listen cover to something like this. Within 5 minutes of going through, this is what I found. Listen to this.
And then he sent to every Muslim province one copy of this original. One to every province. Now let's see, what provinces is he talking about? Well, he's talking about the province here in Mecca, Medina, Basra, Baghdad, Damascus, Jerusalem, Alexandria, Cairo, Herat, and Nishapur. There's the word I was looking for, Nishapur. I knew it had a pur in it. Nishapur. There are the 9 provinces.
Now, let's put aside the fact that the earliest references about the number of Uthmanic Mus'hafs is 4. Basra, Kufa, Sham, and Medina. Some added Yemen, very few sources added Bahrain, but 4 is the correct number. Let's put that aside, that, because I'm not aware of any reference that says that Uthman radiallahu anh sent out 9 copies. Let's put that aside. He mentions 9 cities. Now, realize this is not a slip of the tongue. This is not just, he's sitting in front of an audience and he's speaking from his head, because I understand. I have made such mistakes, when you're sitting in front of an audience and you just say something, sometimes you say a word you don't mean or intend. No, these are his prepared notes. This is a PowerPoint slide that he's prepared, and he has material on his website that is exact same. He is publishing material in this regard, and he mentions that Uthman radiallahu anh sent mushafs to 9 cities, to in 9 places, right? And in that list, he mentions that Uthman radiallahu anh sent a copy of the Mus'haf to Baghdad, the city that was founded by the Abbasids as their capital in the reign of Abu Ja'far al-Mansur, a city that did not exist for at least 120 years after the death of Uthman radiallahu anh. So allegedly Uthman is sending a copy of the Mus'haf to the city of Baghdad. And then here's the clincher. He also sends one allegedly to Cairo. I mean, guys, every high school student of Islam knows that Al-Qahira was named and called Al-Qahira by the Fatimids in 969 CE 358 Hijrah. Wallahi, when I saw this clip, I didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. I mean, my mind is blown by such utter ignorance. Only an untrained idiot. I mean, I'm sorry to be so brutally harsh here. It's not my nature. But if you're going to tell me that Uthman radiallahu anh sent a Mus'haf to Qahira, right? You're going to tell me that Cairo, I mean, you're not just a cretin of the highest magnitude. You have publicly humiliated yourself and disqualified yourself from ever speaking about the basics of the religion of Islam, much less about some of the most advanced topics like the history of the Quranic compilations and the origins of the Qira'at. You don't even know Qahira and Baghdad were cities founded by the Abbasids and then the Fatimids, and you think that Uthman radiallahu anh is sending a copy to cities that do not even exist.
Oh dear, did he even realize that I'm using modern names? I always use modern names so people know what I'm talking about. Of course I did use the word for Baghdad in the 7th century, or by the time that Muhammad would have been living. In the 7th century, it was known as Ctesiphon. No one would... if I were to say Ctesiphon, then of course none of you knew what I was talking about, because you don't use that today. So I use Baghdad, because that is the name that was introduced by the Abbasids in 749 or 750, the mid-8th century. That's true. Remember, if you want to... But then he went to really confronted me on the word Cairo, that I shouldn't have used this, because the name that existed at that time was Qahira. Well, that's not true either. That is not the name that was used in the 7th century. And I'm a little surprised that he made this huge error. Qahira is actually the Arabic equivalent to what we would say Cairo today. But Qahira, if you look at it, it was introduced in 968 by the Safavids. But what's fascinating, that is the 10th century. And he did say the 10th century that Cairo was introduced. No, but then he said the word I should have used is Qahira. No, Qahira is Cairo. It's the Arabic equivalent to Cairo. What would have been the name in the 7th century? Fustat. Fustat is the name that was used in that city, because remember, it used to be called Memphis, but Fustat is the garrison town outside of the city that the Muslims, or in this case, those who took over and conquered Egypt, that's the word that they would have used, the name. So he even got that completely wrong. Now, I'm not going to sit there and berate him for that, but I'm going to ask him to be careful when he's quoting me. Make sure he quotes me correct. At least we do that with him. Whenever we quote him, we actually film it and put it up there so you can see. And make sure that you understand that when I'm talking about an ancient city, I'm not going to use that name unless I'm specifically referring to the name of the ancient city. I use the modern name today. And that's why it's important that he makes sure that he doesn't put up in this case, it was a straw man, and then he just tried to confront the straw man. He then went and he spent a bit of time on 2 other areas, and they had to do with this material, actually, with this book here, Daniel's book. And it's a video that I put together, I'm thinking it was in May of 2019, so over a year ago. And he made 2 major points on that and really confronted me. The first one is this idea of dumping the Hafs text, that was chosen by Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad in 1924. And that I suggested that all the Qurans in the world were dumped in the Nile.
So I'm looking through these lists here. I see another one, which is relatively recent compared to the other one. I said, okay, let me log on to this here. Here's what he has to say in this clip.
1936.
Right.
Because it was such a success in the city of Cairo, King Farouk, who then came to power in 1936, decided to put out a new edition for all of Egypt called the Farouk edition. The Farouk edition then took the Hafs text and made it Egypt-wide. 1936.
Right.
That was so successful in Egypt. But before that, I forgot one thing. When they did this in Cairo, when they, Muhammad al-Haddad did this in Cairo, they took all the other Qurans that were different than Hafs. They took it out into a boat and they sank them in the Nile.
Oh.
You hadn't heard this before either.
No, we need to go down. We need to do some
they're
dives.
still there.
We need to do some
Yeah, we
dives.
need to do some dives. So
Don't waste your time. We have 10 of them right here. We've already found 31 of them.
Like,
Now this one actually did get me laugh out loud. Literally, I LOL'd when I saw this. This is comical. So apparently, all of the mushafs of Egypt in the reign of King Farouk, which is barely a century ago, that were not hafs, they were taken on a boat and they were dumped into the Nile. And now we have to go scuba diving to go retrieve them. By the way, I'm a scuba diver. I'm an advanced rescue nitrox certified scuba diver, over 200 dives. So if you need a diver, believe me, I'm more than happy to go diving anywhere. Wallahi, where does one begin? I mean, you do realize, Mr. J, you do realize that, forget how ludicrous you sound, the sheer quantity of Qur'ans that would meet your criterion would not just sink a boat, they would block the entire Nile. I mean, I don't even understand. Do you listen to yourself speaking? You think all the copies of the Quran that didn't conform to the quote-unquote version, which again shows your ludicrousness, there is no version. It is a printing that is being printed for one of the first times by a printing press. And so yes, a committee is being done together. By the way, where does the origin of the story? Again, half myths, blatant exaggerations, ludicrous claims. There is a German Orientalist, which is actually not verified, who claimed that when King Farouk printed his copy of the Quran, there was an Indian print that had, according to the committee, some technical errors, meaning the printing press of the Indian print was technical. And so according to this German Orientalist, we don't have verification elsewhere, that those copies were destroyed respectfully. Again, this is one of the key differences. When Muslims want to dispose of a mushaf, they will do so in a manner that is respectful. In the Christian tradition, it's disrespectful. In the Muslim tradition, you will burn it because you don't want to throw it into the trash, or you will throw it into the water. So according to one German Orientalist, even if that happened, it's not a big deal. Maybe 50 or something copies of a particular printing were disposed of. But no one ever claimed that all the Qurans of Egypt that didn't conform to the King Farouk were gathered in a boat, as if they would fit in a boat, and then dumped into the Nile. Utter ludicrous.
I went back to look at the video and I didn't see where I said that. I never said all the Qurans in the world were dumped. He didn't even understand. I guess maybe he just didn't watch the video very carefully, or I don't think he was intentionally trying to misquote me. It was actually a joke. If you notice, we're laughing about it. We're saying, isn't it interesting that they took out the other 29, we're assuming that there were 30 official ones. Hafs had been chosen in 1929 to standardize the test for high school students. High school students were coming and doing standardized tests, and they were coming up with all kinds of different references, Quranic references, that didn't agree. And this is the problem with the Qur'an. That's why they all are so different, and that's why they still are being printed today. So when you memorize it, you want to memorize it with the script that you have grown up with, the script that you have memorized. You want to make sure that there's a printing of it. And so in order to standardize these tests in Cairo, in the city of Cairo, they had to throw out all the others and ask Muhammad ibn al-Husayni Hazrat to choose one, and he chose the Hafs. And then they took the other ones. When I'm saying he took the other ones, the other ones of the high school students there who had brought them to the schools, those were taken out. And this is nothing more than a symbolism. It's symbolic, throwing them into the Nile. Of course, no one would suggest, and I don't know where he got this idea that I was making a suggestion that all the Qurans in the world at that time were thrown into the Nile. Anyways, nonetheless, he seemed to make completely misconstrued. And then he went on and he talked about the Farouk, that this was actually, the story comes from the Farouk edition, which is in 1936, which is then chosen for all of Egypt, that book. And he suggested that had to do with a German scholar. I'm guessing he thinks that that's where the story comes from. No, it doesn't. This story about the standardization, what Dr. Shadi Nasser talks as the fifth canonization. Look at the book that's just come out 2 weeks ago. Dr. Shadi Nasser from Harvard University, who has taught in Yale and is also now teaching at Cambridge University, one of the foremost scholars in the world today. He is very clear that there are 5 different canons of the Quran. The first one would be, of course, that which all of us have been told about Uthman's canon of 652. Interesting, Dr. Shadi Nasser is not writing a book on that one. I think the reason possibly is because there's nothing there to look at from 652. The second would be the Ibn Mujahid from 936, where the 7 readings were chosen. And the third one would be the Shatibi, I guess is the best way to pronounce it, in 1194, the 12th century. The fourth one would be Al-Jaziri, which he does refer to in this. He just kind of gives a reference to it in this video. And that would be 14. Fascinating. He never wants to put the date. 1429. That is the 15th century. That's 800 years after Muhammad. You have to put it on a timeline. And then, of course, the fifth canon would be this one in 1924. And he goes on and he says that this story probably is not... he thinks that I'm making it up.
He has a claim that is so preposterous. Wallahi, you wonder, is he even intelligent? Does he understand what he is saying? He says to his two co-hosts or colleagues there, who are another story altogether, if you look at what they're saying, that he says to them that, he talks about this King Fahd version of the Quran in 1985, meaning the Madani, Mus'haf printed by the King Fahd complex. And then he says, listen to this, that he's going to make a secret reveal on their show. For the first time in history, he's going to come out and tell them the truth about something that nobody's ever heard. Okay, Mr. J, what is this amazing truth you're going to tell us? Listen to this, guys. And I wonder truly, does he know he's lying? Or is he mentally insane? He says that they, some unscrupulous organization, they, who they are, the secret, mukhabarat services of Saudi or some type of kamikaze or some ninja groups, they sent secret missions across museums all over the world to break in and to change the ancient manuscripts to conform with the King Fahd edition, so that it looks like the King Fahd edition is in conformity with the most ancient manuscripts. And he claims that he has proof for this and that he has doctoral students that are going to be exposing and talking about this. Now, the notion that, and by the way, some of these manuscripts are in libraries in Paris, in the Museum of London. You have the Chester Beatty in Ireland. So according to Mr. J, simultaneously missions across the globe were sent in to break in to libraries, including the Topkapi, and to secretly change the manuscripts so that it matches up to the King Fahd printing of 1985. I mean, wallahi, listening to people like Jay makes me realize why there are still people who believe the earth is flat,
I don't know where he get that idea from, because I do write in my notes, and he says he looked at my notes. I do write where the source is, and the source is Gabriel Said Reynolds. In fact, I do mention that right around that video. I looked at the video quickly just now, and I do mention that this is Gabriel Said Reynolds, the Quran in its historical context, written in 2008. And then I also go on to refer to the Quran in Context, History and Literary Insights, Investigations into the Quran's Milieu by Angela Newworth and Nicholas Sinai in 2010. So this has been around for 10 and 12 years, Yasir Qadhi. Now, he may not like what I'm saying, but don't think that I'm making this up. I'm quoting these people. These are well-known scholars. Dr. Said Reynolds is Notre Dame University. He's considered one of the premier scholars in the world today on the Quran. Same with the Newworth and also Sinai. Argue with them if you don't like what we're saying, but we have to go to where the scholars are saying. And remember, he is correct. I don't do this research, but I make sure that I quote what other scholars are doing. And almost everything I'm quoting on the Qira'at now comes from Dr. Shadi Nasser, and I would love for him to have engaged at that point. He didn't want to. And then he gets into this notion, and this was really curious. He says that, and this is fascinating, because in that show, I look at the camera and said, I'm making a statement right now that if King Fahd, the King Fahd edition, which was canonized, or which was chosen in 1985 for the whole world, and as the Hafs as a standard text, if this was happened in 1985, and at that time it was 34 years ago, now it's 35 years because this was over a year ago when I made this video, then I said that it looks like that somebody there was no standard in order to make all these 4,000 changes that Dr. Brubaker has come across. Now, what's fascinating to me, I said that, I looked at the camera, I'm making this claim here. that this all has had to happen since 1924. Now, since that time, and this is where, and I thank Yasir Qadhi. He was correct. I shouldn't have made that claim a year and a half ago, and I don't make it anymore. I'm very careful not to, just because. Can you see how idiotic that is? And in fact, I have said it a number of times in my videos that you cannot make that claim anymore. I did it a year and a half ago, but I can't make it anymore because there was no way that anybody could change it. So it's obvious to me that these changes had to be made possibly during the Ottoman Empire, when the Ottoman controlled many of these manuscripts. My assumption now is that these changes probably had to be made during the Ottoman Empire for two reasons. And this is now November, as I said, November the 26th. And I may have to change this. You're right. And Yasir Qadhi can slam me for it if he wants to. But this is where I'm asking for people to listen. I'm suggesting now that these changes have happened since the Ottomans came to power. So we're talking possibly 800 to 800 in the last 800 years. But I'm saying that for two reasons. One is because we do know that the Ottomans did choose the Hafs as their Qiraat. That's the Qiraat they favored. And that's why Muhammad ibn al-Husayni al-Haddad chose the Hafs in 1924, because it was the choice of the Ottomans. So if that is the case, then, and they would have controlled almost all of these manuscripts, 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th century, up until the 18th century, up until the 19th century, when the Ottomans in 1924, 20th century in 1924, when they lost their empire. If this is the case, then I would suggest that that's probably when all these changes happen. So we're talking about hundreds of years, over 100 years. But I'm doing that for a second reason, too. And I'm putting this out there. So don't get me and call me all calls and names, but understand what I'm saying. In order for the Ottomans to have done this, to have done these changes, there has to have been a standard. If the Hafs was their standard, then does that not stand to reason that this book Hafs is where all the other manuscripts are agreeing with this and not with these? They're certainly not agreeing with this one here, the Warsh. They're certainly not agreeing with this one here. These are the two most popular today. The Warsh is the one that is memorized and used all over North Africa. This is the one that has now been standard for the whole world. There are 5,000 differences between these two. 5,000 differences. And when you look at all these these consonantal changes that Dan Brubaker is coming up with, as much as Yasir Qadhi does not like Dan Brubaker, listen, you can't just sit there and use vitriol against a guy who has a PhD in this area. This very area. This is his area. This is his PhD. You may not like him. And to say that he doesn't know Arabic, please.
If you look at who they're quoting, I looked at a number of their references. Generally speaking, a lot of their quotations, a lot of their material is coming from a particular person by the name of David Brubaker. And again, I don't have anything personal against this individual. I've never met him. I don't have anything personal against him. At the same time, he's the only one that has a PhD in that circle in Islamic studies. At the same time, it is just astounding to me. Frankly, I don't understand how someone of this nature can be awarded a PhD. If it's any consolation, by the way, his PhD, even if it's from a good university, but the university is not known for Islamic studies. The university has no track record of producing Islamic studies scholars. It doesn't even have a reputable Arabic program. So he got a PhD from a known university, but not one that is known for Islamic studies. And by the way, he's not involved in academia. He has no position. He's not a player in the actual arena of academics. There are some people, they decide to do a PhD, somehow they just get in, they move on with their lives. I think this is one of those types of individuals where he managed to eke out, just barely pass every exam and do it. Frankly, it is shocking that somebody of this nature actually has a PhD because of the egregious errors that one finds on almost every page of anything he's ever written.
Please, that's not only rude, but that is not proprietous. That's very improprietous to say that of another scholar. But nonetheless, saying that, to suggest therefore that this was done since the 1924, I have pulled back on that in the last year and a half. So Yasir Qadhi is correct. And what I'm now asking is, did this all happen since the Ottomans were had their empire? And then he made a huge error. Yasir Qadhi made a huge error. He said that Dan claimed that he had looked at 10,000 manuscripts. Where in the world? He didn't say it once. He said it twice.
You know, there's an account on Twitter that's by some undergraduate somewhere in America. That's a parody account of Brubaker. It's a parody account. And all that this person does, I don't know him personally, by the way, all that this person does is that he screenshots something from one of Brubaker's publications and then puts it online. That's all that he does, just screenshots it. So I'm going to take from this parody account, right, something that David wrote that he said, he claimed, and he claims to this day that this writing of his, it is revolutionary and it is groundbreaking research that will allegedly cause the entire field of Quranic studies to change. And by the way, he claims to have studied over 10,000 manuscripts of the Quran. And I honestly don't know what he means by study, because if you look at what I'm going to show you, wallahi, you don't even need to have any knowledge to see how ignorant this person is. And again, I have nothing against the person, I'm just saying this, but I mean, how can you possibly make these egregious errors? Look at the first slide here. Now, for somebody who claims to be a manuscript expert, right, he boasts, as I said, of having 10,000 manuscripts studied. He literally has no clue that in early Islamic manuscripts, it's very common to write the number of the verse in the ancient abjad system. In the ancient system, not actual numbers, but the abjad system, where every single letter represents a number. And so he takes the lam ha, right? You see that lam ha. He takes the lam ha and he does not understand that it's 30 plus 5. Lam means 30, ha means 5. And so lam ha means verse number 35. And he feels that it is an added word, lahu. And notice the idiot actually says that there's a lam ha at, look at it, 1635. And he says, I don't know what it's doing there. I've made this really cool discovery. Doesn't really make sense over here to have a lahu. It must be a post-production alteration, but clearly there's some message being sent here, some major shifting message, but I don't know what it is. This is how jahil this David is, that he doesn't even know that lam ha is the number 35. It's there, and the idiot literally says 1635 lahu. I don't know what it is. My God, and I have to respond to people that are taking from him. Do you understand my exasperation and frustration? I mean, can you cut me some slack when I'm being so harsh here that I have to actually waste 5 hours and another hour doing this video to clear myself of ever being associated with a bunch of imbeciles like these?
These 10,000 manuscripts, where in the world did he get this 10,000 manuscripts from? Daniel has never made that claim. We have never made that claim. I know of 10 manuscripts that he looked at, and there's more than that, but the 10 are the ones that he was doing for his doctoral thesis, where he found 800 differences, 800 completely differences with the consonantal text. And this has nothing to do with Qira'at, this has nothing to do with Araf, this has nothing to do with the 5 dots, or diacritical marks, or the 3 vowels, okay? This is the razm, this is the consonantal, this is the skeletal text. That's why it's so damaging. And when doing his doctorate for Rice University, now, good old Yasir he does not like Rice University, and he doesn't like Yale, that's for certain. He even says later on that that's where people get corrupted at Yale, as he got corrupted, though he got his PhD from there. That's hold on to that. 10,000 manuscripts. Yasir, I don't know where you got that from. I would suggest that you be careful how you quote Dan. He's never said 10,000 manuscripts. And he says, therefore, all of us, David, myself, and Daniel, we are ultra-crepidarians.
You know, actually, there is a word that comes to mind. I mean, it's still in my head from my GRE days. Almost 20 years ago, I took the GRE. And there's a word there. What is it? Ultra-crepidarian. Ultra-crepidarian. That's the word. Look it up. Ultra-crepidarian. Ultra-crepidarian is a person who not only speaks outside of his area of expertise, he speaks way out of his league, but he also feels the need to announce to the world that he is an utter idiot. This is the word that comes to mind when I'm dealing with these people. Ultra-crepidarian. Memorize it, and I hope that inshallah ta'ala, if one thing comes out of this lecture, please, O Muslims, that are involved with this, start using this word and popularize it again, because that is exactly what these preachers are. Ultra-crepidarians.
I would suggest much of what you have shown from this video that you would also be part of the list. Come and join us. Yes, it looks like we're all ultra-crepidarian. So I'm probably going to title this an ultra-crepidarian response to Yasir Qadhi. Finally, he gets to the holes in the narrative.
To be fair, I did use language that I regret. And the claim that there are holes in the narrative is employing language that did create confusion. And I apologize, I ask Allah's forgiveness for that. There's simply no excuse, and I learned from my mistakes. And my senior ulama that I look up to asked me to get rid of the interview because it's going to cause more confusion. There was no covering up. I just don't want to cause more confusion. But when these missionaries are persisting to take that clip and then pretend that my topic is somehow related to their incompetency, I have no recourse except to go public and show people that I have nothing to do with these Cretans whatsoever. And I had to waste a few hours just to quickly show you their level of incompetence. And as I said, I swear to you, I have not spent more than 5 hours. And even that, I regret that I had to even spend 5 hours. Can you imagine if somebody actually, dedicated more time to go over their mistakes and show how utterly juhal these people, they're not even worthy to preach a basic course of Islam at the middle school level, much less speak about some of the most advanced issues of ahruf and qira'at and preservation of the Quran. Nonetheless, they're using my clip of the holes in the standard narrative. And yes, I did claim this, and I need to own up to my words or retract or somehow clarify. And I have no problems discussing with anybody who is interested and willing to learn. I do believe that a mainstream opinion, because here's the point, there are multiple interpretations of the ahruf and qira'at, and everybody knows that there's over 40, by now everybody knows there's over 40 opinions about the ahruf, as Suyuti and others mentioned, and I follow another one of them. The one that has become dominant, the one that is now mainstream, this is what I called the standard narrative, but in reality there are many standard narratives. Even what I'm holding is a standard narrative. It's just not the one that is most common in our times. And so I am, again, what I don't want to go, there's no need to go into details in the video, and I'm more than happy to discuss with anybody, but I don't mind giving you some examples so that you understand that when I said there are holes in the narrative, I regret the wording, but what I'm trying to say is that there are questions that there's a majority opinion and then there are minority opinions. For example, one of the issues that is the issue of the tawatur of the qira'at. I believe that the qira'at are mutawatira in their essence and syntax, but not necessarily in their specific choices of each and every rawi, of each and every tariq. And by the way, this was the position, the later position of the giant Ibn al-Jazari. Initially, Ibn al-Jazari said that everything is mutawatir, and then towards the end of his life, he also came to this position, which is basically one of my disagreements with now what is the mainstream. Another thing that I disagree with as well is the origins of the differences of each and every tajweed rule, each and every pronunciation of the vowels, right? As maybe anybody who studies the qira'at is aware, there are so many tajweed rules, there are so many ways to pronounce things. So for example, وَالضُّحَى, or you can do imala sughra, وَالضُّحَى, or you can do imala kubra, وَالضُّحَى. You can do it all of these three types, right? Now, did the Prophet himself recite it in these three ways, which is what mainstream says? Or did he allow some of the Sahaba to recite in their dialects, and that became accepted, and that is accepted as a part of the Quran as well? My position is the latter, not the former. And by the way, even Ibn Taymiyyah clearly says that many of these differences, the pronunciation differences, they go back to the Sahaba and to the dialects of the Arabs. Okay, so this is another thing that I might disagree with the majority opinion. Also the development of the orthography of the Mus'haf. Again, if you study the evolution of the ancient Arabic script that was first written down in what is called Ma'il, and then Hijazi, and then Old Kufic, and then Modern Kufic, and then Nasta'liq, and then along the way you have orthographic changes coming. For example, the word Qala was typically written back in the day with Qaf Lam, and later on it started being written by Qaf Alif Lam, right? So again, this is something that I'm advocating, and many scholars of the manuscripts advocate this as well, that there was some spelling changes. What's the big deal if instead of spelling color like the British spell it, you spell it like the Americans spell it? It's the same word, right? So these are some of the things when I said holes in the narrative, which definitely, I regret. It shouldn't have, made it such a big deal. But yes, there are opinions that I hold that are not the dominant opinion. And every single one of these opinions deals with some minutia, some abstract issue that I respectfully have a position that, alhamdulillah, has precedence. It has scholarly backing. I am not the first, and I'm not the only, and I'm not going to be the last. The problem that happened is that this group of critics, right, these Orientalists and whatnot, they had no clue what I'm talking about. And they took my clip and they exaggerated it as if I am in any way, fashion, or form linked with these idiots and ignoramuses. And that is why I have to make this video. The problem with these critics is that they think they have unearthed something absolutely new that no one before them has ever understood. They exaggerate the notion of qira'at to make them different versions of the Quran. They exaggerate the printings, King Farouk printing and King Fahd printing, and they think these are different versions of the Quran. And here's a point to the Muslim audience, okay? And even if you're not Muslim but you're listening for information about this group of people, I want you to know one simple fact. Each and every bit of information that this group picks that is authentic, that is true, because a lot of it is just mythology or fake. Each and every bit of it that is true, they're finding from within our sources and references, and our ulama, not only were they well aware of these differences, but no one in human history ever considered anything of this to be different versions of the Quran or different competing texts of the Quran. This is sheer lunacy. This is stupidity. The vast majority of these differences are pronunciation. The qira'at themselves, the bulk of the differences are tajweed and pronunciation related. I mean, for example, let me just think of an example. American and British English, right? What's a few words that the Americans and the Brits pronounce differently? I mean, what if an American says, "Can you bring me a glass? Can you bring me a glass of water? Can you bring okay, let me put in garage because that's definitely always an important. Can you bring a glass of water to the garage?" Okay, if an American says that, a Brit says it. How's he going to say it, right? I'm going to try my fake British accent here. Can you bring a glass of water to the garage, right? They speak in a higher pitched voice, right? Glass of water into the garage. There's differences, right? Glass of water to the garage, right? There's a difference there. Is anybody going to say that these are two different versions? I mean, how foolish is this? But this is what the equivalent of what they're doing. Now, again, to be fair, obviously there are more differences than pronunciation, and there's sometimes i'rab differences and whatnot. But again, these are all differences that are well known, well accommodated. Whichever understanding of the ahruf and qira'at you follow, and there's over 40, whichever one you follow, all of these differences are explained in a very, very rational manner that fits in with everything else. What these people do, it's literally as if they cut off 80-90% of the evidence that they have. They take the little bit that they have, they add their own imagination, and they construct an alternative universe that has nothing to do with the reality. And that's why I needed to make this video, to distance myself from this intellectually bankrupt lot.
And the only thing he's really talking about is the word holes in the narrative. That's all he wants to talk about. Because then he goes on and says that the tajweed new rules, these are nothing more than vowel pronunciations. And today that's true. They are vowel pronunciation, but they're in a written text. The 5 dots and the 3 vowels are to give you the delineation of which are the different ways to pronounce it. And see, what he's not thinking through, and this is what an awful lot of Muslims have not yet come back to us on, when Al-Bukhari, look at Al-Bukhari, volume 6, book 61, hadith number 510, when it says there that these Medinians who had gone up to the battle there in Azerbaijan, and when they were gone to the mosque and they were fighting alongside other Muslims who had come from places in Iraq, Basra, and Kufa, and also Syria, Damascus, they were all fighting together, and they would go to the mosque and they would then recite the Quran. And as these Hijazis from the Hijaz, that's the central part of Arabia where Mecca and Medina are located, when they heard the Quran being recited by these others, they heard different pronunciations and they went to blows. They started fighting them. So Hudayfa has to come back. He runs back down to Medina and he insists that Uthman standardize the text so they don't have many different Qurans, like supposedly the Christians and Jews have many different Bibles, is what they're saying there. Now, what's fascinating, what does Uthman do? He acknowledges it. He gets Zayd ibn Thabit to then rewrite the Quran in the Qurayshi dialect. This is the dialect that they claim, and we're coming out with lots of ideas about what this Qurayshi dialect is. Nonetheless, they're claiming that he then wrote it in the Qurayshi dialect, handed it to Uthman, and then Uthman sent it to 5 cities: Basra, Baghdad, not Baghdad, Basra, Kufa, and Damascus in the north, and Mecca and Medina there in the south, in the Hijaz. And then he took all the other manuscripts. Are you listening to this, Yasir? Dr. Qadhi, are you listening now? He took all the other manuscripts and burned them. So now stop and think. How can you burn pronunciation? Unless, of course, you have the dots and the vowels. You have to have the dots and vowels to be able to see a difference in pronunciation. If you're burning manuscript, you're burning paper. You're burning books. Help me here. Come back with me here. I've not seen any Muslims really respond to this. And this is something that Yasir just said it really flippantly right off the top. This is nothing more than vowel pronunciation. This is nothing more than dialects. Okay, so they're dialects, but they have to be written on a paper. They have to be written in a dialectical form. And these dialectical forms have to have 5 dots and 3 vowels to understand the different dialect in a written text. That is what this is. And the first one is this guy right here, Ibn Amir. This is the first of those to be written in a dialectical form that is different. And he is from Damascus. And his date is 736. This is the next century. This is right well into the next century. And all these other ones, the 30 that are made official, they go all the way up until 912, the 10th century. So from the 8th century up until the 10th century, you have all these different dialectical forms that are written using the 5 dots and the 3 vowels. Yasir Qadhi, this could not have been a problem. This could not have been just dialectical differences in the 7th century, because there were no dots and vowels to make it understandable in a written text. Okay? Are you help me out with this, because this is something I've yet to see Muslims really respond to. How do you burn, therefore, pronunciation if it's just oral? Obviously, this is not oral. These are written. You burn books, you burn paper. That means it had to be written differently, and we know that these different writings do not even appear for another century. Well, 80 years. Okay? And then he says this is nothing more than different ways of saying wa or water. Wa. Well, okay, if that is so, you can pronounce it different, but how do you write that in a Quranic text? How do you write it in the Arabic script? Wa versus water. How do you do that in the 7th century when there's no dots and no vowels? Bingo. I think that's what I'm asking you.
As for my Muslim critics, for those that have never studied, I'm speaking out to those that have never formally studied Islam, those that are really not qualified to take on debates within, scholarly circles within Islam. I'm trying to be gentle. Please, my dear brothers in Islam, you are not giving da'wah when your main focus is to refute other du'at. You need to fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and just sit down and be quiet. You have done enough damage in your overzealousness to declare other Muslims and other people of knowledge and other students of knowledge and maybe even other scholars to be deviant. This is no longer about me and you anymore. This is about the whole drama that has been created, the scandal that has harmed the religion of Islam, the ammunition that you have given to Islamophobes and missionaries. So please, for the sake of Allah, learn from your previous mistakes and don't repeat them. Leave refutations to those who are qualified and concentrate on teaching the people that which will benefit them. If you really feel a certain individual has gone astray, go to those who are more senior to him and you. Go to those who are the seniors in their age and their knowledge, and there are people I look up to. Wallahi, one Shaykh said to me, take the video down. Hundreds of people that are Twitter, whatnot, they were saying, they're not people that I'm looking to for knowledge. One Shaykh said to me, take the video down, and khalas, sami'na wa ata'na, because I respect that particular person as somebody who is senior to me in age and knowledge. I listen to my elders, insha'Allah ta'ala. This video is not meant for them. It's really meant for the people that we should all understand are wanting to harm this religion. It's meant for those missionaries, unscrupulous ones, and those murtads that have taken these words and then used and misused and abused my name. And I wanted to say to them, enough is enough. And I'm not going to engage anymore with that crowd, because really they have proven themselves to be arrogant jahils who are simply below my level of academic research. And they're also, some of them, not everyone, but especially one in particular, is a vulgar, obscene, evil jerk. I mean, honestly, there's nothing else to be said. So I have no reason to engage with somebody of this nature. And now I fully understand that this video, because I mentioned them by name, it's going to be followed by hundreds of refutations. So be it. I mean, I have one life to live. If they choose to waste it, barking after every single issue that they want, that's their business. As for me, I want to leave a productive legacy when I'm gone, and I want to do that which is going to be beneficial for myself and my Lord and my Creator. And I tell these Christian missionaries and these murtads, you do as you please, I am doing as I please, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the ultimate judge, and Allah will show who is the real one, who is sincere, and who is the one who is worshipping Him. And with this I conclude this video, and inshallah until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Let me start with this question first. Here's the first question. These many qira'ats, which one of these is the one that's in heaven? Which one of these is the one that was revealed to Muhammad between 610 and 632, that 22-year period? Which one of these, and I just have 8 here, there's 30 of them, actually I have 9 with this one here. Which one of these is the one that Uthman commissioned Zayd ibn Thabit to write in 652? And that's what Muhammad Hijab was asking you. When he put his hand out there and he said, I'm giving you a blank sheet of paper, a blank mushaf, what Quran, which qiraat, which aruf are you going to put there? He wasn't talking about pronunciation orally. He didn't want you to tell you what an oral pronunciation. He wanted to know what you were going to write there. Is it going to be the Hafs? Is it going to be the Warsh? Listen, just between these two right here, there are 5,000 differences. So which one of these? Is it the Hafs? Is it the Warsh? Is it Ibn Amir? Is it the Kalun? Ibn Kathir? Al-Qusay? Khalaf? Shoba? Al-Duri? Those are the ones I have here. Which one of those comes from heaven? Which one of those actually was the one revealed to Muhammad? That's the first question. Please answer that question. Okay, stop calling us names and all kinds of vitriol. That's not going to help. It doesn't help you academically. It doesn't help your authority before the world. And listen, most people see that when you go to vitriol, when you start using ad hominem, it usually means that you've lost the debate. And ironically, you really didn't talk about this. You didn't look at my videos on this. You didn't ask and even ascertain what I'm saying about the Qira'at. You never looked at one of those talks that I've done on it. And I've done 10, 20 of them already. Well, actually, since June 8th, probably only about 10 of them since June 8th. Number 2, what is it that happened to you at Yale University? Exactly what crisis did you go through? And why is it this idea that you have that if you go to Yale or Rice University, that these are not legitimate places? You got your doctorate there, so are you saying your doctorate's not legitimate if you say that you got corrupted by Yale? Please help us understand that. You talk about, and I remember in the video you said that there was, there are certain, you have a respect for the Quran, the Muslims have a respect for the Quran, and there's a line beyond which you don't go, a red line you refer to. We don't go beyond this red line. Well, we don't have red lines here in America, and you should know that. You live in Houston, you should know. You were at Yale, there is no red line at Yale. You can ask any question you want, because that's what has been asked of our Bible. So I'm asking you these questions. What red line is it you can't go beyond, and why is it you weren't able to answer Muhammad Hijab in 25 minutes? He had to ask you twice. What are you going to write? Which one of these qira'ats is the one in heaven, the eternal one? Well, the obvious answer is none of them are, because none of them, there is no diacritical marks. There was no vowelization for the one that's preserved in heaven. That was written, that was created by men. That was created by men after the 7th century. Bingo. Put that under your hat and see how you're going to run with it. Then thirdly, what are the holes you were referring to? If you said that I shouldn't have used that word, what holes exactly were you referring to? Because you actually were meaning something, and I would suggest those holes are the fact that for 1,000 years now, you Muslims have known about this. Listen, 736, 738, 770, all the way up to 812, all the way up to Ibn Mujahid, 936. Ooh, don't stop there. Can you see? We're talking about over 1,000 years now you've had this material. And you did mention that for 1,000 years, this has been the most difficult question to answer. If it's the most difficult question to answer, then why all this vitriol against us when we ask the question? All we're doing is asking the question that should have been answered 1,000 years ago and should have been answered by you while you were at Yale. You've had 25 years to come up with a better answer than all of the Qurans, or all the qira'ats are the Quran. That was your final answer after 25 minutes by Muhammad Hijab finally insisting. All 30 of them? Do you realize the team in London has already found 93,000 differences? Have you looked at all of those 93,000 differences? And that's just looking at 23 of the 30. They've already come up with 93,000 differences. The team in Australia has already found 5,000 differences between these two. Have you looked at all 5,000 of these? And are you saying that all those differences that do change the meaning, that do change the theology, that do in some cases change the practice, that these are all in the one that's in heaven? Can you see what we're this is the line that we know that, listen, this doesn't make sense to us listening. And you might say, well, that's because we're ignorant. Okay, call us ignorant, call us idiots, like you love to do. You're going to call me an idiot for even asking this question. But see, we have to ask this question because we do live in the West, and because this is causing so much damage to your religion, and it's causing so much damage to your murtads, that you got so upset with them for even asking the question. And you're saying, do not disagree with us. Well, that's the red line. You're saying, do not go beyond this red line. You're saying to all these other murtads, God bless them for asking the question, because they need to know. They need to know, why is it that you have been saying for years and years and years and years, and you have said this for years, that there is not one word, there is not one letter that is different. You're the one that said that, Yasir Qadhi. You continue to say it. Or let me ask you this right now. Do you still believe that not one word or one letter has been changed? See, that's a red line that now has stopped you. That's a red line that you are now stopped. And remember what you did say in that interview on June 8th. The rest of the world has come leaps and bounds in the last 100 years. And they're looking at us like an emperor with no clothes. Until you answer these questions, you do, to us, look like an emperor with no clothes. Your own words, back at you. Please, get some clothes on. Start answer these questions. Stop talking about this red line which you can't go beyond. And stop saying that you have to take my class, then we'll do a deep dive, but you couldn't even answer Muhammad Hijab there in 25 minutes. And then I'm going to end with this. I want to know from you, Yasir Qadhi, when is the first complete Quran, that's just like this one here, not the English translation, I'm talking about the Arabic, the first complete Arabic Quran, all 114 surahs, when is the earliest that you can find? Give me a date. Tell me, where is that ubiquitous Quran that you're always talking about? Where is this Uthmanic manuscript that you're always referring to? Where is this manuscript that's 114 surahs and that every word and every letter is exactly like the one I have here? And I'm not talking about the qira'ats. I'm not talking about the ahruf now. I'm talking about the razm, the skeletal text, the consonantal text, what Dan Brubaker is coming up with. And he is the first to publish this. So don't sit there and wipe him across the table and say that this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. This is the first man that's had the courage to write and publish. And that's why you only have vitriol to throw at him. When you throw vitriol and ad hominem and the kind of words you use against Dan, against me, and against David, I can pretty well see that you really don't have answers to these questions. You really don't have answers.
And because they have repetitively done this, I will have to break my rule and just for once give these idiots the smackdown that they deserve.
I was fascinated because I was waiting for the smackdown to happen. I didn't really see it happen. I really didn't understand what his problem was because he did actually go to our material on him.